Welcome, everybody. It's lovely to have you all with us. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for making time for tonight. As Deirdre mentioned, I just wanted to give you, if you're new to Superset, I want to give you a quick thumbnail on who we are and what we're all about. So Superset is very privileged to work with world-class founders on a mission from God who are committed to building breakthrough enterprise software and services companies centered on data and AI. That's what we do around here. We've done it for a long time. My co-founder Vivek, where's Vivek? Raise your hand. There he is. Vivek and I, long-term co-founders. Vivek, I also refer to as my hetero life mate. We've been doing this stuff for a long time, building companies centered again on data and AI. I remember when we started Superset, it was before November 2022, and everybody was really excited about Web3 and crypto. So there was a reporter at TechCrunch who wanted to write a little article about us, which was nice. And he said, yeah, these guys are doing data AI. It's boring but bountiful, which really hurt my feelings at the time because it wasn't boring to us. And apparently now exciting for it to not be boring for so many of us, especially as we come together to have conversations like the one today. One of the things we're really intentional about over here at Superset is what we call the creation of a learning economy, an economy of learning where all of us get together in moments like this, connect, collide, compare notes. I know some things, you maybe know some things. I bet you if we put our brains together, we can learn more quickly and win together, especially in this time when, look, some of us have been doing this for a while and you think you know some stuff. And in the times we live in, especially, you realize, not so much, right? So some of the lessons that we've learned along the way and that we're committed to harnessing and bringing to the build out of all of our companies here at Superset, they carry forward. But it's also humbling to know that many of the things you thought you knew, again, might not be relevant. So we're all learning on the job, right? Week over week, we're learning on the job, shaking different pieces of this elephant as we try to figure out the whole picture. So with that as backdrop, I'm especially grateful to Aliisa Rosenthal for joining us here today, who is now at Acrew Capital, a Superset investor we're privileged to have with us at Catch. And formerly, she was with OpenAI, truly in one of the most seminal positions in the early build-out of AI. So talk about learning and being there. We're so fortunate, Aliisa, to have you with us. Thank you for joining us. And yes, absolutely. Thank you to Aliisa and Acrew for sponsoring. I want to introduce our co-host for tonight, Machi. Machi, would you please come up, say hi?
Thank you, Tom. Hi, everyone. It's great to see many familiar faces in the room. Thank you for making the time. I'm Machi Dedema. I'm co-hosting, as Tom said, this event. I'm the founder of Acrew Capital. Before Acrew, I was at Sequoia and General Catalyst for several years, which is how I met Aliisa early on. And earlier in my career, I was at WhatsApp, where I helped build their enterprise and payments business from the ground up. Acrew is a first check inception stage fund. What that means is that we like to partner with founders at day zero. So oftentimes before they've actually incorporated their businesses or very soon after, and really helping founders refine their ideas, land their first set of customers and design partners, et cetera. Enterprise AI is at a very early stage right now, as we all know, which is why conversations like this are super important. And I think what's exciting is that the companies that are going to define the next decade of what enterprise AI look like, many of you are going to be founding those companies. So we're very excited. As Tom was just saying, Aliisa was at the front row seat of figuring out what it means to go from AI experimentation to real enterprise adoption. And so she's probably one of the best people in the Valley to learn from on this topic. We hope you enjoy the conversation. Thanks again for being here. Over to you.
Hi. Is my mic on? Great. Thanks for coming, everyone. My name's Peter. I'm one of the general partners here at Superset. Before I did this, I was a builder. And I'm really damn confused about this AI thing. I did a PhD in AI 20 odd years ago, and I still find it confusing. So I'm really glad we've got Aliisa here today, who helped shape what has become a once in a generation kind of event, the growth of OpenAI. So thank you so much for joining us.
Sure.
Every week I meet some of our founders here who are struggling with this is a great shiny demo, got his customers really excited about it, now they want it. Oh crap, what do I do? And talking about what's enterprise ready and how do I hit these insane ARR milestones that I see everyone else kind of putting out in the press. So having you here is a true privilege. I'd love you just to introduce yourself and tell us about, when you joined OpenAI.
Sure. Hello, everyone. Nice to see you tonight. Nice full room. So I joined OpenAI in early 2022, back when it was really not obvious at all. In fact, at the time, it was a guy I'd worked with at Mixpanel many years earlier, reached out and said, "Hey, you got to join this thing. It's really cool." And I was like, I don't know. And he kept pinging me and pinging me. And finally, I wish I'd said yes the first time he asked. It took me about 8 months, and finally said, "Can I introduce you to Sam Altman?" And turns out that guy's pretty convincing. I honestly, I hadn't heard of him before I met with him, so luckily I wasn't terrified. And I was amazed by the sheer audacity of his vision. And then shortly after that, I met a product manager named Joanne Zhang, and she showed me Dolly on her laptop at her kitchen table. And I was just like, I don't know what the commercial use case is for this, but once you've seen an image come to life through natural language, it's hard to unsee it. When I joined OpenAI, I was running a sales team at a publicly traded company, which is a slog, at a big job. And then I went to OpenAI, where I had 2 salespeople. We had, I don't know, maybe 3 million in revenue. We had a handful of inbound leads every week, and really no product. And I reported into the CTO because I didn't know what to do with sales. And this guy, PW, and I was like, PW, what should I do my first week? And he said, I don't know, why don't you go learn Python? So that was my illustrious start at OpenAI. I also, funny story about when I got the job offer, I called, all the smartest people I knew and asked them, should I take this? And literally every single one of them told me not to. It goes to show, buck the trend. The only person who said I should was my dad. So, ask my dad for advice.
Smart dad. As someone who's been a CTO having sales report to them, I can only apologize. I think I've probably told people to learn Python too. So you're joining OpenAI. This is all pre-ChatGPT. No one really knows what this company is. It's mainly a research organization. What did you think? What are you selling at this point?
Yeah, that's a great question. I was trying to figure that out too. So we had an API, and it was 3.5. And, we had some developers sort of self-serving. There was a PLG motion. They'd find it, they'd swipe a credit card, and then they'd immediately, email and complain about latency or rate limits. So my job was to call them and try to get them. When I first joined, there was no motion, there was no sales motion. So I thought, okay, why don't we do something like, we'll give you higher rate limits, we will give you an enterprise agreement, we'll give you an SLA, we'll give you SSO if you commit to a certain amount of consumption. So I started at 25K, and we'd worked up from there over time. But so the first thing we were selling were basically committed consumption contracts or API. We did not have a ton of interest in this yet. It was a trickle of inbound. And our sales process is actually, we had, sales at openai.com, and someone would email, and then I'd copy that and put that in Slack and say, can anyone get this? And one of the 2 or 3 salespeople would be like, I got it. Or sometimes nobody said that, and just no one would respond. It was a really buttoned up tight sales process in the beginning.
That is the most familiar sales process. Of all the founders here, everyone recognizes that, right? That's kind of just how it works, yeah. And so then how long after you joined did ChatGPT launch?
It was about 6 months into it.
Okay.
So at that point I had 5 sales reps, and one was on paternity leave. We had Salesforce maybe 20% implemented. We were very ready for ChatGPT.
And then everything gets easy, right?
You'd think so.
Yeah.
I know, it's an interesting problem when I tell people that I probably had to handle the biggest deluge of inbound leads that anyone has ever handled before. And everyone says, wow, what a great problem. But the situation I was in was we had no enterprise product other than an API. I couldn't give any company really what they wanted, which was an enterprise version of ChatGPT that didn't store their data, that had SSO, that had an enterprise agreement. They wanted a CSM. They wanted somebody to talk to. I had none of these things. All I had was an API and a couple of sales reps. So we had to very frantically build the thing while we were flying it. So we had to fully implement, tooling to capture the inbound leads, to try to build automation to respond to them, to try to figure out which leads that we should talk to and implement. I had like literally an Excel spreadsheet with my lead scoring. And, if you were, like a CTO of a publicly traded company, we would talk to you. I mean, it was very rudimentary. And then trying to hire as fast as we could, trying to figure out who we were even trying to hire.
Yep.
What is the right profile? What is the product we're selling? Are we selling an API? Or are we going to build some sort of enterprise version of ChatGPT? So it was like a strangely shaped problem that I was dealing with that I don't really know if anyone else had quite dealt with anything like that at the time.
I don't think anyone's ever dealt with anything quite like
Maybe not.
OpenAI. I mean,
Yeah,
that was
maybe that was
it was a unique point in history, I guess. But like culturally, what do you notice about the organizations about it? Because before ChatGPT, it was largely a research organization, as I remember it. And I also advised someone not to join there then. Little did I know. And then overnight, you've got this kind of breakout consumer success. You've got enterprises calling you. What does that feel like internally?
Yeah, no, it's a great point. It actually, so many people are shocked when I tell them that it took me about 3 months to get headcount for the sales team. I had to
Wow.
survive this with 5 salespeople until about March. And secondly, it took me 9 months to get Mira to approve ChatGPT Enterprise. And everyone is like, what? Why? And I think you worded it perfectly. It's a research organization that accidentally created, the biggest consumer product of all time. And then, so you have this research organization. It's like, oh my God, we're a consumer product company. And then you have to convince them that they're also an enterprise company. And that's what I had to do, which took a lot of effort to get them there.
Wow. And so during that kind of period where you're going from kind of 5 salespeople, we don't really have a product. Now we've got all this inbound. We're trying to convince people internally this is a real thing. Like, I guess that's the kind of thing that most people here would love to have in their business. But where did you kind of fall on your face? What should people be looking out for?
Yeah, we fall on our face a lot. I can say there were a few big mistakes I made. The biggest mistake I made was the biggest customers were the noisiest. So all the Fortune 500 companies were the ones that could get to me, right? They would email Sam and Sam would forward it to me. And so I felt disproportionately like there were all these giant companies that really wanted to, spend millions of dollars with us, and they wanted a sales rep and they wanted a high touch VIP white glove experience with all of the enterprise bells and whistles. So I steered the enterprise ship in that direction first. And we built a very expensive, fast, high-end product, and we sold it to a bunch of enterprises. And then we said, okay, now let's build for everyone else, and let's build a self-serve product that isn't quite as fast. It's a little bit cheaper, that doesn't have quite all the same enterprise bells and whistles, but everyone can self-serve. And guess what? That one, so the first product I released, we got to $50 million in 1 quarter, which I thought was pretty cool. And then we released a self-serve product and it got to $50 million in a week. So I realized what a mistake we had made. And then some of our enterprise customers actually wanted to churn to the cheaper product. So that was a really big moment for all of us. We realized, and this is what I tell founders, if you have an option between 2 paths, building the self-serve, PLG, low friction, not sales heavy product versus the sales heavy, expensive product, do the other one first. It's just so much easier to layer on enterprise later. But once you've built out this, expensive enterprise product, you can't really undo that. And then the salespeople basically were super pissed because we basically built a competitor in our own company. So that created all kinds of totally unforced error on our side.
I think one of the things that we see across some of our portfolio companies is early on, it can be really exciting to get these big kind of lighthouse customers. If you've got this big kind of Fortune 500 brand, and you almost, you put so much effort into them, but they're also the slowest moving and the most annoying, and they get a bigger suck on all your resources, not just in sales, but in products and engineering. How did you kind of, particularly with something like ChatGPT, where presumably most Fortune 500 are coming in and saying, we want one of those, please. How did you stop the distraction of, doing custom builds all over the place?
Yeah, this one is really hard and takes so much discipline because what happens is these big companies come along and they say exactly what you want to hear. I'll be a great design partner. I'm not that hard to work with. We only need these 2 or 3 things in your contract. We're going to spend millions of dollars. It's going to be great. And then they string you along. They're really slow. There's always 2 or 3 more things that they need to add in. So, one example at OpenAI is right when I started, we decided to take on Morgan Stanley and design as a design partner. That proceeded to eat up pretty much all of our legal, security, and product resources for the next 18 months. And when they finally launched a product, it was ChatGPT for internal Morgan Stanley users, which we had released about a year before. So it's easy to look at that and be like, oh man, that was a giant mistake.
Yeah.
But we did get the Morgan Stanley logo. We
Yeah.
could put that on all of our slides. That was very valuable. And Morgan Stanley, I would say, helped kind of shepherd us through becoming an enterprise
Yeah.
company. And they were good, great partners to us. But you have to be really careful. I think we dramatically underestimated how much work that
Yeah.
customer would be. So what I tell founders is when you think of these first lighthouse customers, they are truly partners, design partners in every sense of the word. And you need to get them to be very upfront with you
Yeah.
on their real enterprise requirements, not just for a pilot, but long term, what does this look like? And, you want someone that's going to work with you and be communicative, and it's going to be a true partnership. The other thing I'll say is charge them 10x more than you think you should, because they will earn it. They will justify that
Yeah,
cost.
100%. And so how did you, in this kind of new world that's kind of emerging, you've got early design partners, you've got big Fortune 500 brands. How did you kind of stay aligned between kind of, product, sales, engineering in terms of priorities during that kind of chaotic time?
Yeah, this one was really, really hard. And honestly, I don't know if we nailed it. OpenAI was especially hard because we had consumer and we had enterprise. And, they're always fighting for resources. I think one thing we did was very clever, and maybe this is a unique thing for OpenAI, but because I kept hiring engineers to do like SSO and they get poached by cool places like model behavior and I couldn't compete with it, I basically opened an office in Seattle. And we said, we're going to, this is our enterprise engineering office, and we're going to go hire from, Microsoft and enterprise organizations. And this is our geolocated, geofence engineering. And that actually worked.
That's smart.
Yeah, I don't know if I don't know if every company is going to run into that problem, but no engineer wants to work on enterprise features. It is not fun. It's not exciting.
And like reflecting on that time back now, obviously that was wildly successful. OpenAI has been, shockingly successful by all historical standards. What can we learn from that in terms of success, but also what can we learn from that in terms of things to avoid for founders today? So a lot of people out here.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's easy now to look back and look at the mistakes we made along the way. I think I think our biggest challenge at OpenAI was because we had created this new category that no one had ever done before. It was really hard to figure out how to focus. And I actually think this applies to all startups. Like every founder I talk to is having this problem where they say, okay, I have this product and I'm getting pulled in 10 different directions from different types of buyers. And should I try to build for everyone? And honestly, I think this is the hardest thing at OpenAI. It's restraint and discipline and figuring out who's your ICP and when do you say no.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think any of us want to say no to a customer. I don't think, you want to build for everybody. But ultimately, I think that was the hardest thing for us at OpenAI was let's figure, are we going after the developer? Are we going after the Fortune 500 company? Are we, are we selling an API or are we selling ChatGPT Enterprise or ChatGPT Gov or ChatGPT EDU? Like what is the product? What is our sweet spot and where do we invest? And that is still an ongoing struggle at OpenAI. And honestly, I hear this so much from founders I talk to where they're like, I have this product and it could be used in 10 different ways. And I want to go build all 10 of them. Right. And instead, it takes real discipline and focus. Who's the ICP you're building for?
Right.
What do they need? And just go nail that one thing and be really great in that lane before you try to go build 20 other things.
This is really reassuring because I know this world. This is something we see a lot, and I'm glad to hear in a way that OpenAI face some of those same challenges.
Yeah, it's the same startup challenges, just at massive scale.
I guess one of the we've for years now, certainly here, we've been talking about the bottlenecks, not the software, it's the go-to-market. It's about how do you acquire and retain and scale customers. And I guess there's this fallacy at the moment because it's so much easier to build things that you can trick yourself into, well, we can build for all 10 customers, but really nailing product market fit is about who do you speak to, how do you speak to them, what's the pricing, what's the service, everything else which is slower, I guess.
Not everyone gets distracted by building like chip companies and devices and data centers.
Yeah, I guess there's that.
Bigger scale, but you can still get distracted by should I build for a different type of buyer or build another product or feature because this one company is asking for it.
And then as you kind of scale, as OpenAI scaled, I guess one of the things that a lot of early stage companies are getting trapped in is this kind of proof of concept phase. There's a lot of kind of AI test budgets, around at the moment. So in one way, it's really good because all of a sudden doors that were previously closed are now creaking open. And so people are willing to adopt newer technologies. On the other side, you can waste a lot of time getting these proof of concept budgets, but are you actually adding value every day to your customers and therefore, building a sustainable business? How did you at OpenAI, and what have you seen other companies do to make sure that they're actually spending their time on the sustainable business models?
Yeah, I call this pilot hell, and it's I
I'm
see a
stealing
lot
that.
a lot of founders get stuck here. I really hate pilots and POCs. One thing I coach founders on a lot is as a seller, you have certain levers of power. Some of those levers are the demo, pricing,
Yeah.
and the other is access to your product. And once you give access to your product away, you lose a lot of power in the deal cycle. So all of a sudden, the onus becomes on you to make sure that pilot is successful, to make sure everyone's used it, make sure you've checked every box, and then get them all through another sales cycle
Yeah.
to sign an annual contract. So I really recommend people flip the script here, and there's different ways to do it. Obviously, the easiest is if you have a product that lends itself to PLG, have people self-serve and then upgrade them or sell them into an annual product. If your product does not lend itself to PLG and it needs some services, it needs some support, it needs some implementation, there are a lot of little tricks you can do. So I was talking to the founder the other day. One thing he was doing that I thought was brilliant was he's signing customers on a 12-year agreement with a 3-month out clause. And what that does as well, instead, it flips the urgency onto the customer because now you have 3 months to test this out, validate it, and make sure you want to use it.
12 years.
Sorry, did I say 12 years? 12 months.
12 months.
A 12-month agreement. Sorry, a 12-month agreement with a 3-month out clause.
Okay, yep.
So you basically get a 3-month
Yep.
trial period.
Yeah.
But it puts the burden on the customer.
And they're
get
paying
through
for those
that.
3 months as well, right?
And they're paying for those
Yeah.
3 months. And then you do the full sales cycle up front. And so there's other little things you can do. If you have to do a pilot, if there's no way out of it, make sure it's extremely structured. It's agreed upon upfront what the dates will be, who needs to sign off, what the success criteria are, and you've got as much as possible who needs to approve it before it moves to annual contract, and try to get all of that up front, and then be very, very selective who you do pilots with because they are a lot of work and you lose all of your power in the process.
And when you mentioned something really interesting there, which is who needs to say yes. I think a lot of our companies, a lot of the people I speak to, often get really excited. We had a meeting with Apple, and they got really excited. Like, how do you work out for a product like, say, ChatGPT Enterprise or any other product you've seen? How do you work out who is it that needs to say yes to actually get your customer to pay for it? What sort of process do you go through to map that?
My favorite question, because it's sort of offensive when you ask somebody like, can you sign off on this? Do you have
Yeah.
a budget? So I usually ask things like, have you purchased software before for your
Right.
company? And if they're kind of like, no, not really. And you're like, okay, well, what do you think it might look like? Is there anyone else you might need to bring into the process? And they're like, yeah, I bought a lot of software before. Great. Like, were you the one that signed this? And just kind of poke a little bit. And it can feel uncomfortable, but it's really important that you're talking to someone who has the power to ultimately sign the check. And if
Yeah.
they don't, you need to get to that person because the deal won't get done without them.
And when do you think, in the context of startups, when do you end the kind of founder-led sales and start transitioning to something that's more scalable? Do you have a secret kind of tip you could give us on that?
Yeah, I mean, look, ultimately, the founder is going to be the best salesperson for the product, probably forever, which I know is hard to hear because everyone likes to think you're just going to hire some salesperson who's going to come in and be a total whiz and get you $10 million contracts and you don't have to be involved.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, you will always be the best advocate and evangelist and seller of your product. But salespeople can start to help in a few ways. I think initially when you are starting to get more than you can handle, you're just like, I can't do all these pitches, I can't handle all this account management, is usually when I recommend hiring more of a generalist. So I love hiring people from like Bain or GSB who want to get into tech and are just willing to roll up their sleeves and build process and, really like be a part of the company and not just worry about their paycheck or their commission. You don't want someone like right out of Salesforce for your first sales hire because they're going to expect a sales engineer and a CSM and a comp plan and all the bells and whistles you don't have. And so that can really break the culture.
Yeah.
So I usually say when you are starting to get overwhelmed and you can't handle everything, hire a generalist to start offloading. hold off on hiring the professional salesperson as long as you can, because it is really hard on the culture. If you can get away with hiring one or two generalists and just paying out spiffs instead of a comp plan, and let me
Yeah.
explain what a spiff is, 'cause I realize not everyone knows that term. So with sales, usually you make, say, like you're at like 400K on target earnings. You get a 200K base and then a 200K variable that depends on hitting your quota. That's the way standard sales packages work. But instead, what you can do is say, hey, I'm going to hire you at 250K, and we're just going to have spot bonuses throughout the year that are variable. And that lets you be really adaptable. So you can say, for example, okay, this quarter, what really matters to me is getting like one giant deal done. So whoever closes $1 million gets a 100K bonus this quarter. And then the next quarter, you might say, okay, I really care about getting 2-year contracts because I'm really getting nervous about our renewal rates. So anyone who signed a 2-year deal gets 10K. And it just leaves you nimble, especially early on when you frankly have no idea what a realistic quota should look like.
My God.
OpenAI, by the way, still does not have commission. It's still just spiffs and base pay and equity.
I wish
I wouldn't recommend that we went too far, but it shows you how far you can go with that.
I really wish I'd spoken to you 5 years ago. This is really refreshing to hear from someone who's been like a sales leader. Where did you get these learnings from?
Well, honestly, I was a first sales hire myself.
Okay.
A couple of times. So I found startups as like that initial generalist. I call it the Renaissance rep, just the person who's wants to do everything, not necessarily there just to close big deals and make big commission statements. So I've done that myself. And so I kind of learned doing it. And then, yeah, I think just mostly on the job. I've learned this just from 20 years of doing it.
Tom, we're stealing that Renaissance rep. Founding AE doesn't sound as good. Renaissance rep.
I can't take credit. A guy named Mark Leslie at Stanford Business School coined it. So he has a paper on it. It's great. And just like, what are the characteristics of that first sales hire? And they look a little different from every subsequent sales hire.
So now you're in a different land. Now you get to work with a whole bunch of different companies and offer them a bunch of advice and see a lot that's going on. One of the things that I think a lot of us are struggling with is to work out what is really durable ARR. Companies are a little bit further along, maybe going through late stage funding rounds. There's come more, certainly in the last couple of months, a little bit more scrutiny. What's your take on this?
I think the challenge a lot of companies are running into right now is most of their ARR is actually pilots.
Yeah.
Or POCs, and they're just extrapolating, times 12.
Yeah.
I think that is probably not a valid way to count ARR because pilots don't always convert, and there's a lot of effort in converting them, as I hit on earlier.
Right.
So I think that is the biggest challenge I see right now is having to dig into, okay, you say you have 5 million in ARR. What is that really? Well, it's actually mostly pilots and even pipeline, which to me feels very gray area. Durable revenue is, contracted annual revenue. Now, I will give a qualifier here. One thing that really surprised me at OpenAI was historically in my 20 years in SaaS, everyone liked buying seat licenses because it was predictable, you understood it, no surprises. We found at OpenAI people really preferred consumption. And they would rather do credit-based or token-based consumption pricing, despite the fact that that is very varied and unpredictable. So that really surprised me. I think it's a shift we're just seeing across the landscape right now in buying behavior. I think because everyone's getting bombarded with AI products, the buyers and IT teams are extraordinarily sensitive to shelfware or over purchasing or buying A products that aren't used. So their thinking is we are happy to pay for consumption because we want to pay for what people are using. What we don't want to do is commit to hefty seat licenses and then it sits on the shelf and nobody uses it.
Right. And we're certainly seeing the same. And I think also it's almost, you're forced to, if you're building a product on top of some of these large language models, you're kind of almost forced to adopt some consumption-based pricing because your cost structure is based on these tokens.
Luckily, it works for everybody, which is nice.
Yeah, but getting the lock-in can be hard off that, right? So minimum annual commits.
So that was, I was going back to what I was saying before on the ARR front, because usually we just look at contracted revenue, but now it's a lot harder because now you do have to do more run rate. So you've got these customers are spending on average this much each month. And so here's what my run rate ARR is, which is a brave new world.
So switching gears a little bit now, one of the things we think about a lot is role collapse. Like thanks to this wonderful AI technology, we no longer need massive engineering teams for the same scope of work. We don't necessarily need the same number of roles. We like these Renaissance engineers who part product manager, part designer, part architect, part engineer, right? And that's hugely valuable. And so we see that happening very rapidly on the engineering side, thanks to tools like Claude Code and pick your AI coding agent of choice. Um, if you were kind of scaling up a sales organization now, given the landscape and given the technology, what do you think would be the same? What do you think would be different?
Yeah. So what I think will become more automated fairly quickly, I'm actually surprised it's taken this long, is the outbound work, the BDR work. We're starting to see it. There's some tools out there that are getting popular to do automated campaigns and messaging. There's voice AI tools that do auto dialing. We're starting to see that ramp up. That actually has taken a lot longer than I remember back in 2023. We were like, there'll be no more BDRs in 12 months. It hasn't quite played out that way, but it seems like that should get automated. And then the next piece will be the admin work, the CRM updates, maybe even the contract negotiation, not the price haggling so much as going through the redlining of the agreement.
Mhm.
Like that stuff takes up a ton of salesperson's time right now. So a lot of the day-to-day admin work, I think, will get more and more automated. And then maybe even some of the inside selling, the
Right.
demos. And
Oh, wow.
yeah, I mean, the demo could be fairly automated. What I think will be durable is what I'm calling the revenge of the steak dinner. I think as more and more of the sales process gets automated, it's going to be even more critical for the human connection. And I do think in general, we're seeing this across the landscape. Just human experiences, I think, are more highly valued now than they were 5 years ago.
100%.
And I think that will only escalate in sales. And so I think you're going to see way more conference booths and dinners and travel and on-sites. And I think this is good for salespeople ultimately, because that's really what our gift is being in person with people, reading them, selling to them versus updating Salesforce and sending automated campaigns. So I think that the job just gets more and more human.
Makes complete sense. I'd like a quick plug Zig.ai, solving a whole bunch of that sales admin stuff. So watch them grow rapidly over the coming months.
We plan that.
Yeah, we couldn't have found it better, but we didn't. I'm going to open up to the floor now. Please raise your hand if you've got a question for Aliisa, and someone will run to you with a microphone. Yeah, and if you could tell us who you are and what you're building, that'd be great.
Yeah, my name is Hussein Ismail. I am still not building in the ideation phase. And I have a very specific question about the go-to-market. I come from the enterprise side, the high end actually, strategic accounts.
The steak dinner side.
Yeah, and I'm walking into more an SMB, like 5 to 20 million or 50 million. And the product comes with value, right? It's all built on top of value. My question twofold. You talked about enterprise and you talk about consumer. What is your tips for SMB? The second fold, if the product bring value, what is the best way to go about it? Is it just pricing based on the savings, or just I heard PLG, maybe a trial, and see let them see the savings and then convert.
Yeah, okay. So enterprise seller going into SMB, and what are the differences in the SMB motion versus enterprise? Yeah, it is a whole different world. I've done both, a lot of both. And the interesting thing with SMB is it's much more technical. So, I think as an enterprise seller, you're used to being able to focus on value. And and that's what sellers are taught to do, right? So don't focus on features, focus on value. It goes a little bit backwards with SMB because what you're trying to do is just validate the product as quickly as you can. And it's a velocity game. So it's, how do I get them to use the product, validate the product, and see basically either test it out through a PLG motion and move to an enterprise plan or a commitment. Or can I just, churn through as many conversations as I can? So it's almost like you're going to have to undo a little bit of your sales training on the enterprise side, because on the enterprise side, they teach you never do those things. It's like two different art forms. So it's like it's a machine. It's a velocity game. It's process, it's volume, it's transactional, and it's how can I put a minimum effort into the sales cycle to convert at the highest value as quickly as possible.
All right, we have more questions. Don't worry, we give ourselves plenty of time for questions. Okay. Puya.
Hi, yes, I'm Puya. I used to be a researcher at DeepMind. Now I'm a solo founder. I'm trying to sell my product to apparel wholesalers. So these are like wholesalers that are selling $100 million plus in their revenue, and they haven't, when I talk to them, they haven't bought any AI product. The only ones that they've used are ChatGPT and Claude. And their expectation is
And maybe
that,
Copilot.
and maybe Copilot. And their expectation is that you basically, so the product that I'm building is automating one of the full-time employee roles in these wholesalers. But I'm like a pre-seed stage, so I don't have the full product of course rolled out. And their expectation is they want to replace that full-time employee today. And as a result, they're not giving me any contracts. How would you navigate this situation?
Okay, so you just to play it back. So you are selling to very large enterprises in a traditional industry.
Yes.
And the value proposition that are you making the value proposition that they replace somebody?
The value proposition is that they get penalties from large retailers like Walmart and Target and these things. And that full-time employee basically disputes the penalties because it's very noisy, and then they get the money back. So now our system automatically is gonna find evidence and dispute on behalf of the company. But yeah, it's like we go like retailer by retailer, dispute type by dispute type, but they're looking for the full solution.
Got it. Okay, so they want a full solution that kind of works out of the box. And I mean that is the hardest part of doing the sort of large enterprise sale. And honestly, at OpenAI, we struggle to sell our API to large enterprises because they want everything to work out of the box. They don't have internally any of the developer resources that you're used to when you're selling to digital natives or AI natives. So either, two options. One is you try to build something lightweight that works out of a box instead of like the wedge, the initial product they can just use and works, and then use that to get in and sell them the more fulsome product. The other thing is you have an FDE team, which I know a lot of companies are kind of defaulting to because they don't have the support internally to do it, and you have to provide it for them. I would say it's probably better and easier if you can just like have one self-serve out of the box piece of the puzzle that works to at least get you in the door before you have to put heavy services into it, because that's hard and manual.
Hi, Aliisa. First, thanks so much for all the tips. It's been incredible to hear your journey there. My name is Alejandro. I run a fund here called Act One Ventures. I have more of like a human leveling question for you. I feel like I'm working way more. Probably all of us are working way more, even though we've automated so much of our lives. What is it that you're doing that kind of helps you unplug whenever you do unplug? And sort of secondary, what are some of the tips that allow you to do some of your best thinking, like wherever you are, however you are, that you bring back into the office when you're cranking again?
Yeah, interesting. So it's funny, when I left OpenAI, my first few months, I told everybody I'm just touching grass. I am not looking at a screen, and I literally did just go wander the Marin headlands or Land's End and just listen to books on tapes for hours. My cortisol was like off the chart when I got my blood work, so I was like, I gotta get that down. They're like, have you tried meditation? Not a big meditator. I need to get it tested again and see how well I did. But still a work in progress. I still love to walk and listen. And Honestly, I still think I know it's been around for a while, but I love the notebook LM functionality that just takes content and turns it into a podcast. I think it's excellent. I really learn by hearing, especially if I'm walking or doing something physical. So I still almost every day I go for I live right on the Presidio. I go for at least an hour-long walk, and I take all the content I need to prep for my meetings the next day. I basically say, okay, here's all the meetings I have tomorrow in these industries. Here's a bunch of content articles, and make me a podcast. And that's a really easy way for me to stay, like have all the content I need in a format that's really ingestible for me. I find it really hard to just sit at my desk and read. I know some people can do it. I think it's amazing. I feel the temptation to click on everything. So getting outside and listening really helps me learn.
Take one from the back.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Marie. OpenAI is a big part of this, but I think buyers have become much more aware of privacy and data security as a result of purchasing AI as a personal or an enterprise decision. But now that's kind of coming back on young companies who are in bootstrapped beta mode and are kind of approaching design partners, even in the SMB stage, who are now asking for SOC 2, DPAs, and kind of more hefty security that we can't necessarily afford at this point to onboard. I'm curious what your advice would be for navigating that to give assurances that we care, but also that we're just not there yet.
I mean, luckily there's so many tools available now, I think, to help with this. Obviously Vanta, and there are other tools to help you with the SOC 2 Type 2. Plug for one of our portfolio companies is Vanta, full disclosure there. But honestly, that feels like there's so many ways, like these trust portals now that you can build. So you can basically put a lot of the documentation into a trust portal. Buyers can come, they just put in their email, they get an NDA email to them, they sign it, and then they can access all of your documentation. If you have, if you're just starting out, a trust portal is this is a new thing that did not exist 3 years ago. And now I'm seeing them everywhere, and it has saved so much time on the sales process. This used to be so manual. Unfortunately, the short answer is you have to invest in this. Like, this is table stakes right now. If you are selling enterprise AI, you have to invest in the compliance. The good news is there are so many tools and automations to make this easier than it's ever been before. But I do tell founders, like, day one, like, you need to start thinking about this, because like the SOC 2 Type 2 takes a while to get. You have to get an audit, and then you get the report. And that's okay, because as long as you're talking to buyers and you say, don't worry, I'm in process on this, that's enough. But you do need to start this early in the enterprise journey.
I imagine the SOC 2 for OpenAI must have been a nightmare.
Oh my God.
I can't even imagine. All right, I think we've got time for a couple more questions.
Hi. Thank you so much.
Sorry.
Thank you so much for organizing. I'm Sahana. I'm part of helping build CodeRabbit, which is an AI code review tool. My question is, right, when you were building, certainly they had like a lot of challenges. An additional challenge that startups right now are facing is OpenAI and Claude Code and all of the other foundation models. So what advice would you have when we are trying to sell to enterprises where we are being judged against the foundation model, especially where they want to wait and see what you are going to provide?
Yeah, look, if there's anything I'll say is none of these companies want to be beholden to just Anthropic or OpenAI or Microsoft. They want to have choices. They want to have optionality. They're all terrified of vendor lock-in. They're all, frankly, pretty scared of these companies, which might be surprising. There's a lot of fear. So you talk to enterprises and they say, can I really trust these companies? Can I trust them with my data? Can I really give them everything? So I think the advantage for startups right now is it's optionality, its ability to choose their own tools. Even if Claude ends up maybe building something of what you're building, it's good for them, for the buyers, to have options outside of just Claude, because ultimately, I think the pitch is, do you want your company depending on one product? And I found at OpenAI this was actually really hard, because I go out and pitch and they just say, well, we don't want our company dependent on you, and we don't want you so entrenched with all of our workflows and all of our data that we're stuck with you. Like, companies are really afraid of that, so you can use that to your advantage.
One more at the back, then a couple more at the front after that.
Yeah, hi. I'm co-founder of a company called Nearshore. We basically are creating payment infrastructure for nearshoring suppliers, and our target audience are mid-sized enterprises. And I'm curious, like, effective strategies that you've seen for network effects. I realize that you didn't really touch upon referrals. Was that intentional? Do you think that like the Dropbox referral strategy is like a stale strategy? I'm curious to hear your thoughts around that.
Yeah, no, I'm a big fan of referrals. At Mixpanel, where I worked way back in the day, we had this little badge you put in your footer and you got 10,000 events for free with it. And that thing drove like 90% of our inbound for years. And that thing was so popular. I was talking to a company today, and they were saying that all of their inbound has come because they were able to sell to Cursor, and then Cursor listed them as a sub-processor. And now that's revealed in every contract. So they just get all these inbounds from people contracting, buying from Cursor and seeing them listed as a sub-processor. So some really unique virality and growth vectors here. If you want to go a little bit more old school, what I tell everybody is the best moment to ask your customer for a referral is right after they sign the contract with you, which is maybe not intuitive, but they have the most goodwill right when they sign the contract. So as part of your onboarding, ask them for referrals for 5 customers that they think would be a good fit for your product. And they almost always will. Don't wait till after they're deployed or successful. That will take a while. And invariably, they will be frustrated with something at that point. Just the way the world works. So yes, big advocate for referrals. Great call out.
There's a couple on the
And
front.
in nearshoring.
Oh, hi, thank you both very much. Excellent question and answer. My name is Luciano, CEO of LearnHouse. We're vaccinating professionals against AI automation. My question for you is, based on your experience, what are the key skills that you observed as vital for a founder to develop to navigate this extreme uncertainty and turbulence? And like, how do you see that evolving going forward?
I mean, I think the most important thing is adaptability, because as we've seen, it's just everything's changing so dramatically, and you can't be married to one way of running your business or one product or one feature. You have to be able to iterate, to completely move your team in a different direction at a moment's notice, because Anthropic released something that impacts you. And, I think like Intercom has been a really great example. If you look at incumbents, most of the incumbents are struggling. I mean, Intercom called me on, December 19th, like right after ChatGPT launched. I said, can we set up a meeting with your team? And they launched Fin 3 months later. And they really, they just ripped up their whole org structure, and they had an existing product generating a ton of revenue. And they basically walked away from that and built something new. And so it's going to take that fearlessness and that ability to change directions and change course. And so that's what I'm looking for a lot in a founder. Are they adaptable? Can they, can they handle feedback? Are they so stubborn in their ideas that they won't take feedback and advice from others? And when you throw something at them, can they adapt to that?
Chad has a question here, and I see a couple in the front.
Thank
We
you.
have a few more minutes. It's not 6:30 yet. All right, Chad.
Thank you. I'm Chad from Maslow. We're doing a finance platform for nonprofits. I'm curious, since you, OpenAI basically created a new market, no one has seen a product like this before. How did you think about pricing, and how did you go about that?
Oh man, pricing has been so hard, and we made so many mistakes. It's funny, the $20 per month plan was like a little finger in the air, and we had no idea that would turn into many billions of dollars in hindsight, and we're kind of stuck there. You're stuck at $20 forever. But with ChatGPT Enterprise, I still can't say that name. It took us a lot of iterations to get it right. I still don't know if it's right. But in the beginning, originally we wanted to price it at $100 per user per month. I luckily convinced my product team that was too high. We came down to $60. That was still way too high. The problem with $60 per user per month, aside from the fact that no one's doing seat-based pricing, is that everyone just gave it to their more expensive employees or, like their developers and not the rest of the company, which obviously you want to encourage adoption. So eventually we moved to usage-based consumption I was talking about earlier that encouraged more companies to use it and more employees to use it. And so I think consumption pricing is what buyers want right now. It's also in line, I was talking before, with costs, which is great. And so, whether you do straight up tokens or you obfuscate it with like a credit that gives you a little bit more margin ability. And you can also apply it to multiple things. I've seen companies even apply credits to services, which is clever. The credit consumption model seems to be what's most popular right now. How to price it is hard. Give yourself some margin. And I tell founders, I think founders think about this upside down sometimes. Sometimes they think about, I want to make the cheapest product possible so that people use it. But if you have a PLG motion, you need to make sure that you leave room for discounts for commitments, which is maybe non-intuitive. Sometimes founders think I can charge a premium for enterprise. It's much, much harder. It's really easy if you just say, okay, I'm making up money dollars here, but it's $1 for credit on the pay-as-you-go plan, and it's 50 cents per credit if you sign it to your commitment, right? And then it makes it really easy to get commitments, which makes your business much more durable and easy to run. I can like wax poetic about pricing forever, but those are just some thoughts off the cuff.
The $20 a month, is that literally Sam turns up Monday morning and says, guys, it's going to be $20 a month?
I mean, it was Nick Turley who just
Right, Nick Turley,
feel like we should charge something like $20 seems like good, like
I love it.
leveraging cash.
All great products.
about it.
Yeah, love it.
Awesome. Thank you, Alyssa. I can geek out about pricing too. I used to do it in a consulting firm, but maybe for some people that are here that are doing go-to-market, what you said about finding generalists really stuck with me because I'm going through a bit of a crisis here where I've always seen myself as a generalist. I've been a former founder. Now I'm the first go-to-market hire at an early stage company. And I'm in between this almost dilemma where should I go to one of these larger companies, learn how to sell and become a great AE, or do I stick with, one of these up and coming startups and just like be scrappy, figure out how to be a forward deployed go-to-market person and kill it? So I guess my question to you is, everything is changing so quickly. If you were in my shoes, someone that is wanting to sell and wanting to be a great go-to-market hire, what type of skills would you recommend for me to focus on?
I mean, I think you're in exactly the right spot. And I think that's exactly what you should be doing is joining startups and making yourself as AI native as you possibly can be. It's funny at OpenAI, I often said in the beginning in 2022, when I was hiring sales reps, I cared a lot about the craft of sales. And by, 2025, I was more concerned with how they're using AI to sell. And I think more and more the sales reps that are going to be the most valuable and the most hireable will be ones that know all of the AI tooling, how to leverage it to be a super rep, and know how to like pitch AI and be comfortably an ambassador of AI. One weird thing, it's funny, this happened to me yesterday because I was, anyway, long story, I won't go into it. But yesterday someone asked me, well, how is OpenAI going to pay for all of its data centers? And it brought me back to when I was a sales rep at OpenAI. I would ask questions like this all the time. I'd walk into a meeting to pitch ChatGPT Enterprise and they'd ask me like what their children should be studying in school. And it's this weird moment where as AI salespeople, we are ambassadors of a new paradigm that is terrifying. And especially, we live in Silicon Valley, you go out there and you meet with a manufacturer in the Midwest and they're basically looking at you as the ambassador of AI and they're scared and they want advice. So the biggest thing you can invest in is, thinking and thoughtfulness around AI and how it's going to shape the world in a way that you can give answers. And they don't have to be all rose colored. I think it's valid to be candid and honest about how AI is going to change the world. But I think you becoming a thought leader in AI, understanding the tooling will make you the most valuable salesperson in this world.
Okay, so 5 more minutes. We got one at the back, and I'll get Brittany and this gentleman in the front, and then you're doing all the talking, Alyssa.
Woo.
You got plenty of beverages up
Right,
there.
your spirit.
Take
Yeah.
a break, and you can ask Peter a question too. Yeah, ask yours.
I wouldn't bother.
It's looking awfully lonely up there.
No, I'm good. I'm learning so much. So thank you, Lisa.
So I'm working on a product for Rust. It's like very far on the edge of what AI is capable of right now, things with formal verification, and just trying to move into the space where AI is maybe not capable or trusted enough yet to be accepted in safety critical areas. So how do you go after places where people don't trust that AI can do this correctly yet, or where you're sort of chasing the edge of what's being developed?
Yeah, I mean, I was doing this in 2023. Every room I'd walk into, they say, what about hallucinations? And the models aren't good enough yet, and I can't trust anything the model says, which feels like ancient history now. You don't really get the hallucination worry so much anymore. It's still a work in progress in every industry. I think in some industries, it's just a little bit slower. I think you said verification, so like on the safety side. Mathematical formula verification. Okay. So, I think it's like they're going to come along for the journey. They're just a little bit behind. I think just as the models get more and more capable and as they you start to see the mathematical performance on the benchmarks going up, which I think is going to accelerate really quickly. I think seeing is believing. So I just, just keep going forward, and like the technology will catch up with you. I was there in 2023, and now you walk into a boardroom and hallucinations and bias and all of the concerns I heard back then are no longer what you hear. And I think you'll get there. It's just you're lagging behind by a couple of years.
20 years ago, I tried to put a neural network in a BMW and got thrown out of a room because I thought it was ridiculous, and all it was going to do was predict the angle of the car was on. Now we've got self-driving cars right out there. It just demonstrates it. I'd love to talk about the verification thing, by the way. So let's have a drink afterwards.
Humans are remarkably adaptable. It's just
I think this is true for all technology.
It's just incredible to me.
When
we had DALL-E was first came out in 2022, and now everybody's like, oh yeah, Sora, whatever,
you get so bored of it so quickly,
It's
and you get frustrated with the fact that my AI coding agent's written 20,000 lines of code.
Yeah, what have you done for me lately?
I'm also reminded of when they first brought elevators in. They had to have people in the elevator pressing the button for you because people were scared of them.
And then they played music to calm
That's
down.
right.
Yeah.
And now,
Here we are.
yeah, now here we are. Now we have AI.
Garcia here. York. La. Great. I think it turned up at the butt.
Okay, I can hear you. And I
Yeah,
can
shout.
It's the bottom. Yeah. I'll just use this one. Hi, I am Brittany. I'm with Checksum AI. I am one of the first account executives here. And to your point, I think I would consider myself an AI native sales rep and how I use it. But I would love to hear, how would you say a account executive or a sales rep should be using AI in their day-to-day for the most efficiency?
Ooh, I mean, so there's obviously like the meeting prep and the emailing and even the decks and the collateral and the content. I mean, there's just so many tools out there. So I was talking to a tool today that does dynamic decks for customers based on their concerns and their demands, and then creates dynamic deal rooms for them. I mean, there's unlimited tooling out there. And what's really cool right now is most companies are giving AEs the power to go out and find these tools on their own and start implementing them and using them. A lot of them are just sort of have like free trials, and you can start testing them out. So I could like rattle off 20 tools. I'm in a great WhatsApp group called Agentic Go to Market. I can figure out a way to invite you. Yeah, I'm like, ping me and I can probably get people invited. And everyone is just testing tools and posting what they like. And, there's like leaderboards of great tools and impacts. So yeah, just get out there and try all the tools. Obviously, like Claude and ChatGPT are really great for like meeting prep and, summarizing deals, help you even negotiate. Like I found I put in a ChatGPT, oh, I'm meeting with the CIO of this company, and here's the deal terms so far. Here's what I think they care about. Like help me negotiate. Like what should my strategy be? So it can basically like, role play with you as well. But there's a million cool AI tools out there for sales reps right now. Thank you.
One of the things I wanted to ask more about is recently OpenAI and Anthropic are doing joint ventures with the large private equity groups. And as like a startup, early stage startup, is that like a valid distribution strategy that can be explored in the mid-market? And there's like two paths that I've like spent some time exploring. One is, trying to find a way to sell the workflows to a lot of these like portfolio companies and private equity. And then the other side is to instead of trying to sell to a lot of these services companies, become like one of these services companies and just build that everything like natively with AI as assumptions.
Yeah, selling directly to private equity funds can be very high leverage, no pun intended. You basically can sell just to like Vista equity partners, and they have 90 portfolio companies, and they roll out the software to all 90 portfolio companies for you. And then you basically come and do some training. So if you have a small team and you're trying to get to a lot of companies, private equity is maybe not like the biggest sector or sale group to go after, but it's very high leverage on your time, because you basically can have one relationship with an Apollo or a Carlyle or Blackstone or Vista Equity Partners, and they will basically, then they get to benefit from economies of scale. So their portfolio companies get to buy at better terms. They don't have to sign individual deals. You do one set of paperwork, and then you can roll it out to, the hundreds of thousands of employees of these companies. So I do think it's a very efficient way to run sales if your product lends itself. So every private equity firm has different types of users. So Vista is technology company, so I think it's a really great one if you're selling to digital natives. Some of the others, I was actually I was on the phone with a private equity fund this morning, and they do manufacturing. And so they have, like 400 mid-market manufacturing companies as their portfolio. And this team's job is to go out and evaluate tools on behalf of those portfolio companies. So they're looking at like AI CAD tools and, supply chain tools that then they can roll out to their portcos. So that is often a great way to reach a large subset of companies, especially if you have a specialized vertical to go after and can find a private equity firm focused there.
Yes, I do. First of all, I just want to say I've been to a bunch of talks in 2026. This is by and far the best talk in terms of like value.
2026? We're not that far.
I know we're in April, so verdict's not. But this was incredible. I will name names like I've been to Elad Gil, I've been to Feifei Lee. This was in terms of value-rich information for founders. This was incredible. Thank you both for putting this on. I hope was it recorded? That's my first question. I'm coming back to this. If you'll permit me, two quick questions. One is around zero-day retention. I was fascinated by the early days at OAI. And correct me if I'm wrong, but you described like this environment where number one asked for thing was privacy and perhaps 0 day, and you couldn't give it. Was that right?
I have some gray hairs in my head named
Sorry, Matt.
retention.
I would love to hear more about how you like went about that. Like everyone is asking you for this thing that you literally can't give. So what did you do? Second is similar, but around. And correct me if I'm wrong, you described this early days of OpenAI at like, you have cold inbound asymptotic, but you're not even sure what you're selling yet. So some of the quick frameworks that I go to as a founder as like jobs to be done versus value prop. Maybe your value prop is I can draft a legal document for you. Maybe your jobs to be done is I want access to the latest and greatest tech in LLMs. Where did things settle for you? Maybe it was in a framework, maybe it was something else, but what did you end up deciding you're selling in those early days?
Yeah. So, okay, on the 0 day retention, I have so much I can say about this. In a nutshell, the thing that we did best ultimately was make it scalable. That took a massive amount of buy-in from the research organization, which was really hard. One of the researchers literally wrote a paper and published in our Slack, 0 day retention will destroy the world. And they were just worried. Basically, a high level 0 day retention is the idea that we remove all of our compliance and basically all monitoring of what people are using ChatGPT for. It was terrifying to our research team. So in the beginning, we had this really slow process where Mira individually had to approve every single candidate for 0 day retention. Oh my God. And we had a Slack channel, and I just had to like ping at Mira, and eventually she would say yes. Eventually, we got the research team and Mira comfortable enough with 0 day retention that we were able to scale it more efficiently. And now it's a fairly straightforward process. It's still a little wonky. We used AI for it. So now basically you insert your website. We go search across your website. We do all this customer verification. We assign you a risk score. And if you're high enough on the risk score, we grant you 0 day retention. And we eventually automated it. But that took a massive amount of buy-in across the company. That was one of the most contentious sales process things I have ever been a part of. Your second question around inbound, I might answer a slightly different question, which is looking back, like what would I have done differently when I was just bombarded with thousands and thousands of inbound? I had no idea what we're selling, who we're selling to. I would have collected more data. And so I tell every founder, even if right now you're just throwing up a sign up form and you don't have the bandwidth to get to who's signing up, get their phone number. Dear God, get their phone number, get like their company, their title, get whatever information you can, because eventually you probably will have some sort of bandwidth and sales team and you'll want to go mine that because that'll be a gold mine for you. And even if you don't like, I'm bombarded with inbound every day, there will be a week where you have a big launch and you will get 1,000 signups. And then a month later, you'll be like, oh man, we really need some pipeline. And you'll want to go through those signups. You want to have great data on them. So I think that was the biggest mistake I made in hindsight. We're like, oh my God, we just like didn't ask for enough and it wasn't organized enough. And it could have been way more useful to us later on if I had thought of that before we launched ChatGPT or even like a week later.
All right, we're going to have to call it there, I'm afraid. Thank you so much. Such a privilege to, yes. I think for all of us here, such a privilege to have the guidance and wisdom of someone who really was, a key part of the team that people are going to be writing books about for decades. So thank you for sharing your insights and wisdom with us.
Thank you for having me.
Quick plug for Superset events. Sign up to future events like this and come learn more with us. Please stick around, food and drinks, and talk to one another. Most of you in here are thinking about starting a company or just started a company or slightly better on that journey and crapping themselves about something else. So please take advantage of the community that we have here in the room today. Thank you all for coming. Come to the next one.